Yeah, the rumors that you probably heard all over the internet are true. I lost the Insta360 One X2 in the ocean, so I can't give you a full review here, but at least I can tell you what happened and I can share my thoughts with you about this camera, so let's do that.
Freeze, bitter sky.
So what happened? Last week I went to the south of Thailand to an island called Koh Lanta with my girlfriend. I wanted to test this camera there a bit more, especially for snorkeling, etc., because it has this nice aqua vision and it's waterproof until 10 meters, so I wanted to test that out. And I can already tell I haven't been down to 10 meters, but around 3-4 meters maybe while I was like slide diving during a snorkeling trip. The camera lasted perfectly well. And then there was this cave, like you go through a cave directly from the ocean, and then inside this rock there is a beach with a hole in the rock where you can see the sky. Like, this is an incredible place where I've been a few times before already, so I thought that's awesome to capture some 360 footage with this camera, but I did not really think about how to get the camera in there, which generally not a problem. You can just swim and have it in the water. But I also wanted to bring my iPhone 12 Pro with me to also capture some footage with that, and that actually survived. So I had two cameras with me, the iPhone 12 around my neck, and then I put the Insta360 One X2 with the selfie stick in my swimming suit, and I kept it really tight, and it actually survived going into the cave. Oh, my cat is coming here. It's a bit Philip Bloom style right now. I love cats too. That's Ted, by the way. He just got this thing. It's a bit too big for him. He is not used to that now. Ted, I have to record a video here. So after getting some really nice footage there, I came back out of the cave, was swimming, and I actually looked at the camera, it was still there. And 1 minute later, I swam over to my girlfriend and she asked me, hey, where's the camera? I was like, oh shit. Then me and some other guys from the boat were diving a little bit off this camera, but we didn't have diving equipment. It was really just snorkel equipment there, and the visibility under the water was really bad. So we couldn't find it, and there were also no diving trips to that specific site, so that would also cost too much money to really get it back, and that was not worth it. So unfortunately I can't show you any footage from the Insta360 One X2 of that trip, but I can at least share my thoughts with you. And to be honest, Insta360 doesn't make it easy with these cameras. On one side they are really amazing, and on the other side I also dislike them a little bit. So I would say let's start first with what I liked about this camera. So actually when I put it out of the box, I directly loved this camera because it felt really nice in my hands, and I also saw the battery is quite big, so that made me kind of guess that the battery life is amazing, and it actually is. And also the touch screen is awesome. Like, I'm used to using GoPro touch screens and I hate them. Like, you press and press and they just don't recognize your touch, but the Insta360 One X2 does that really well. It doesn't matter if you swipe or if you touch it, it always recognizes that directly perfectly. Also, contrast and colors of that screen are really nice. Like, that was really something that jumped into my eyes. And also menu, I have nothing to complain there. I found everything instantly. Also, coming from GoPro, it's like the app is so much better. It connects nice and it has so much more functionalities. It's a lot more innovative, and I like that Insta360 does that. Like, you have all these cool effects there, etc., which I will come later to, because the effects, they are nice to have, but they are not only good, I would say. But overall, having the option to have so much control over your camera from your app, and then actually that the app works together with the camera to create certain shots. Like, it gives you a tutorial on what shot to get, and then it stitches them together, and suddenly you have something like a drone fly through, like, emulated. And like, having such features makes it really unique, and there's no other camera on the market that has that. And it seems like with new cameras, Insta360 pushes out new effects all the time, and that was the case with the One X2. And what's also great about the app is all the AI functions. Like, you can simply select an object and it automatically tracks them with 360 footage, because usually in a classic workflow you would have to do that with keyframes, and it takes a lot of time to do. So it's much easier to simply press on your face or whatever you filmed, and it always face stays in the center of the frame. And I think this feature is especially good for beginners that want to create Instagram stories or TikTok videos, etc., because you probably don't want to edit your videos for so long, and that definitely helps. And talking about the smartphone app, you also get an app for your computer, which is like neutral. Like on one side, I like it because you can also do a lot of stuff there that you usually can't, but on the opposite side, it adds one step to your workflow, and that takes a bit longer than it. But it's definitely great, especially if you have a slower computer, because you can export the footage to ProRes directly. These ProRes files, they are much bigger actually than the normal files that you have, but therefore they are a lot easier to edit on your machine. So when your computer is a bit older, you really don't have to worry about that when you get this camera. And video quality is also something that matters a lot to me, and here I must say that I did not have enough time to really try out all the settings to really find the best settings for me to get good quality. But from the footage that I got, what I can tell is that it's actually pretty similar to the Insta360 One R. So the 360 footage actually turns out really good. I like that footage. But if you go into single lens mode where you don't even have 4K, the quality is really not that good. And it was kind of similar on the One R already, and I will talk a bit later about that as well when you talk about the downsides of this camera. And then there's also audio quality, and I must actually say that I really liked the audio quality of this camera. Of course, it does not match with a shotgun microphone or so, but that's to be expected. But for a like 360 or action camera, something like that, the microphones are really good, and I think it has like 4 microphones or so included, and that definitely helps because then it can do more digital processing to come up with a great quality, and does that pretty well actually. Let's listen to a quick vlog that I did here. Okay, now I'm on Insta360 One X Mark II, which looks pretty cool. I actually like the display on this camera instantly because it's so responsive. This is something that you don't have with GoPro, but even on the Insta360 One R it's not as good, but here the screen is so responsive. That's amazing. And I'm actually using the internal microphone of this camera, like no external microphone attached, and I would say let's get a few shots. So much for the audio. Let me know in the comments below how you liked it. I personally really like this camera for vlogging, especially because of the 360, because you have a super wide angle to film yourself, but you can also always turn the camera around in post, and then you can show what you see right now while you're vlogging. So actually for vlogging, this is an amazing camera. And I was also able to do a really quick hyperlapse test here. As you see, it's really quick actually, so I can't talk too much about it, but I really loved the motion blur that it looks quite realistic, and I did not add this motion blur in post. It was directly coming from the Insta360 One X2, which is great. And I also watched some other reviews about hyperlapses with this camera, and there the hyperlapses always looked really nice, which is mostly because you have 360 footage, so you can track objects there, you can freely move around in post, etc. And the stabilization from 360 footage is just so good that you can't get it with a normal camera, even a GoPro or so on, and that definitely helps with hyperlapses because you want them to be smooth. So if you want to vlog and if you want to shoot hyperlapses a lot, then it's definitely a camera to think about. So that's really what I love about this camera. It's really good for vlogging, and the general usability is really nice, also the stabilization, etc. But there are also some things that I don't like, and it's actually things that are the same all across Insta360, and it's mostly the codec. Like the video quality in single lens mode of this camera is just really not that good. As you can see here in the shot right now, it was a quick one that I shot in single lens mode. As mentioned, it's not even 4K there, which is not necessarily important, because even if you have 2K or 1080p, that's usually good enough. But you can definitely tell that the codec is not that strong. Like it looks like the typical low bitrate smartphone from 3-4 years ago footage, and I just didn't like it. It's actually a similar experience as to what I had with the One R. Like it's overall also a great camera, but the codec is just not strong enough to really stick up with quality that you get from some other cameras like the GoPro, for example. That's actually the reason why this camera did not make me switch from GoPro or switch completely over from GoPro, because I just care too much about quality. But what I also need to say here is that for many of you guys, the quality is likely good enough. Like if you mostly want to film family stuff, etc. If your vlogs are generally more about storytelling, it's not that important if some clips are not super crisp, etc., then that's definitely fine there. But for me, I I only get the occasional 360 shot, so my camera would never be used as a main 360 camera because I like to shoot really intentionally. Like I really love to think about what is my main subject, what is my foreground subject, where does the light come from, and how do I have to position the camera to use all of these aspects of the shot to make the shot look good. And with 360 cameras, you usually don't do that. You just hold the camera around and you capture everything and then you reframe that later. But that means that the camera is not in the right position to really capture the framing as nicely as possible. And that's why I personally like single lens cameras like GoPro or Sony a7S III, what I'm using here right now, because that really allows me to focus on getting a specific shot in the moment. It's kind of neutral. It's not necessarily a downside because sometimes it's definitely better to be able to frame that in post. For example, the shot that you see here right now from the Insta360 One R on my motorbike, I can suddenly change the angle of the camera, and instead of seeing myself, you can see what I see. So this is really nice about 360 footage. But most of the time I get shots where 360 is more in my way than actually allowing me to get the best shot. So it's really not necessarily a positive or a negative aspect of that camera. It's just how the camera is, and from most of the shots that I want to get, it's just not really suitable. And talking about stuff that's kind of neutral about this camera is also the special effects like the fly-through, etc., which this camera has that I would actually say are kind of neutral, because on one side it's nice to have it, because if you're somewhere where such an effect would really come out cool, it's definitely better to have it than not to have it. But on the opposite side, it's a bit like the quick shots from DJI, like when a camera or drone comes out, then you see them all over the internet, like first in the reviews and later on Instagram, etc. But then they get all pretty quick, like after a few weeks, and everyone knows it's just a press of a button and everyone can get the shot, and that makes it boring to watch. So this is like, I personally don't really care about all these special effects, even if I know that many consumers like that. But for me personally, that's not really something that I would use a lot. So overall, I can only say that it's an amazing camera if you want to vlog or if you want to do action shots in 360, and it's definitely good, and it's one of the best 360 footage that I have ever seen. But if you want to get more shots like I mostly get here on this channel that are more intentionally, where you frame everything that right directly, etc., then that's not really the camera to get. In that case, I would either go with the Insta360 One R 1-inch edition or GoPro, or what's even better, a proper mirrorless camera like the Fujifilm X-T4, for example, or XS10, that's also a good one, or a7S III if you can afford it. I know it's quite expensive, but that are generally my recommendation for shots like that. But these are also completely different cameras, so this is nothing that we can really compare here. And I think that if over the next few months and maybe 1 or 2 years they keep improving their codec mostly, so that maybe they can come out with a One X2 with a single lens mode in 4K 60 FPS that looks kind of similar quality wise to what GoPro offers right now, like even with the GoPro Hero 7 and Hero 8 it was good enough already, then I think this would be the camera to go, and that would definitely make me switch completely away from GoPro to Insta360. So also like to not just make it a review here, but to also help Insta360 a little bit to improve their products, because I think it's a great company and I definitely want them to succeed in the future. So that are my thoughts about the Insta360 One X2, but what I must also say generally about all of those cameras from my experience that I got with the iPhone 12 Pro is that as long as you don't really want to shoot action footage or you want to go deeply under the water for scuba diving, etc., then usually that is already enough here. I will publish some videos about the iPhone 12 Pro in the next few weeks, and from what I've seen so far, that is really amazing what you can do with this phone. So if that sounds interesting for you, definitely smash the subscribe and the bell notifications button. And also, if you liked this video here, then leave me a thumbs up. That helps a lot to keep the channel grow, and I hope to see you in the next video.